I'm tired of hearing about these motherfuckers.
It's time to go. All I want to do is fucking eat.
We're not practicing to beat somebody. We're practicing to beat everybody.
Nowhere to run and nowhere to hide for 4 quarters. They got to see us in our house for 4 quarters. They got to look us in the eye for 4. This is about us and our family and our house. This is about us. This is our mentality. We ain't backing down. We ain't running. Set a tone, send a message. This is our house. Physical toughness wins in football now. And if you in this room, you got it. If you come in here, you better believe in it. Because this physical toughness is what makes the difference. Elite focus. That's all I'm doing. The guy across from me, I'm fixing to whip his ass. Not in my box, not today. It's about us. It's about our family. We attack. You take that helmet and you strike them. And you strike them and you strike them. That's how you get respect.
Now I am going to pick shit out of them. Physically, I want to break them.
All right, everybody, welcome back in. They said it couldn't be done, and yet here we are, live from Nashville, Tennessee at SEC Media Days 2023. I was not certain we'd be able to pull it off, but here we are. So congratulations to all of us. Thank you for being here. I'm glad you decided to join us this evening. It's going to be pretty much a straightforward live where we're just going to talk about the things that have been going on this week here in Nashville, some of the key points as I see it. If you're here on this stream, you're probably paying pretty close attention to, what's been going on here at SEC Media Days anyway, even if it's just about your team. If you're not a Bulldog, and if you are a Bulldog, then I know you've been paying attention because the Dogs went just yesterday. But either way, we're just going to walk through the week and see where we end up. As always, I'll be taking your questions, or if you have any observations or anything like that that you want to share, we'll try to get to them. And as I go through the different things that are going on, if something pops into your brain, let me know, because I'd love to address it for you if I can. So just to get the week started, I went live on Sunday night when we got here. I think it was Sunday night. I went live on TikTok and was just talking about how the feeling of summer was still in the air. It was hot, but you could certainly tell that there was an excitement here in Nashville. There's always stuff going on here in Nashville. We're literally right on Broadway. But there was a different sort of feel because everybody was pouring in, checking into the hotel, getting ready. And we knew that, there was going to be a lot of stuff going on. And as always, SEC Media Days has not disappointed. There have been some headlines made from different schools, different coaches, what they had to say. Here in the Georgia world, we've had some, changes to the team, to the roster that have gone down this week. And it's just, we knew it was going to be exciting, and it has lived up to the bill so far. So I hope you guys can hear me okay. Again, we are all mobile this week. So if there are any problems, just let me know. And with that, let's just jump right into it. So if we get back and we just start looking at Monday, let's just go day by day, and that way we don't lose track of what's going on. We heard from Greg Sankey on Monday, and he came out and made a few statements that really caught my eye. And one of the things this offseason that people have really talked about is college football expansion. There's been all sorts of rumors about what the SEC may or may not decide to do. Do they need to keep up with other conferences? And Commissioner Sankey came right out and laid all that to rest. He said as straightforward as he can say it. He just, point blank, this is his quote. I'll read it out to you. He's like, do I think it's done? People will say, well, I get to decide that. Right now, it appears that others are going to decide that before we have to make any decisions. That's key, in my view. My view is we know who we are. We're comfortable as a league. We're focused on our growth to 16. We've restored rivalries. We're geographically contiguous with the right kind of philosophical alignment, and we can stay at that level of super conference. And he wanted to point out the fact that people throw around that term, a super conference, and what that might look like. And when people hear that, most of the time, they think that means 20, possibly 24 schools in one conference. And if that were to happen, then literally you would be whittling it down to like 2 super conferences, and then everyone else is just playing for the fun of the game, if you want to think about it that way. So I thought the fact, and I've been saying this for months, the fact that the SEC doesn't have to make any move that the SEC makes in the future, any potential move that they might make in the future, is one that has to be a value add to the conference and its members. If that's not the case, they will not be, knocking down anybody's door to go raid other conferences for teams. That's just not how it is. I think it's important at this point to remind you that the SEC did not seek out Texas and Oklahoma. Texas and Oklahoma came knocking, and the SEC thought that it made sense and decided to let them in. The SEC is in a position of power here. They are not scrambling. They do not need to go find other teams. So, and I don't mean to disparage any other school. So there have been rumors this spring, though, about Miami, Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, Virginia. Okay, that may happen in the future. But just know that if it does happen, it's not because the SEC is somehow feeling the pressure to respond to what anyone else is doing. Commissioner Sankey told us from the podium that is just not the way it is. So we will see as we move forward. But I hear that a lot when I talk to Big Ten people. They're like, well, the SEC has to do this. No, they don't. They just don't. They're fine where they are, and I fully believe, we haven't talked about that here this week, but I fully believe that in the future, the SEC will move to a 9-game schedule, and when they do that, they will twist the arm a little bit. They will get more money in exchange for that inventory of games, and then they really will be in the catbird seat. They will not have that pressure of having to match what anyone else is doing. So as far as the state of the SEC, I would say that the state of the league is strong and healthy and just fine. Thank you very much. So that was a pretty banger way to start the thing, if you ask me. Commissioner Sankey stood right up there and just let everybody know, point blank period, where the conference is as far as realignment is concerned. And then, of course, the first coach that we got to talk to was Brian Kelly of LSU. And BK did not disappoint. He talked about a lot of things, but the one quote that you probably saw this week was one that you literally couldn't miss if you're an LSU, a Georgia fan, or an SEC fan and you care about, the greater conference. Because, he very pointedly let you know who they think the standard is in the conference when he said this. Brian Kelly answered a direct question and said, we're going to be able to beat Alabama. Why wouldn't he say that? They beat them last year. He feels like they are on the same footing as Alabama. Now, I'm certain Alabama fans don't want to hear that, but that's where BK sees his program. We are going to be able to beat Alabama. All right, BK. Brian Kelly also said, I know based on how we've recruited, we'll have a football roster that will be able to compete against Georgia. Is that right now? No, it's not. That's what Brian Kelly had to say. Again, I'll say it one more time. It is very clear who LSU and Brian Kelly view as the standard in this conference and in college football. So you can make of that what you will. Now, if that wasn't enough, of course, these days you don't just get one, you get multiple coaches coming to the podium. And next up was Jimbo Fisher. And the room itself, let me just set the scene for you. We didn't really know what to expect when Jimbo stepped to the mic because he's always a bit of a, fast-talking devil anyway. And he says a whole lot of words, and you're never really sure if he actually said anything. And we all wondered who was going to be the first person to broach the topic of Bobby Petrino joining his staff. And it was one of those things where at first it was a little slow to get there, but then we got a couple of questions about it as we knew that we would. And Jimbo, the way they phrased the question was, how's it going to go if things get a little volatile on the coaching staff? And I want to read out the quote because otherwise I'll flub it. So Jimbo responded, and he's like, volatile? Why would it be a volatile situation? As coaches, have you ever been in any staff room that doesn't have arguments or disagreements? Well, of course not. All staffs argue. Every coaching staff in America has an argument or a disagreement. That's just part of it. Now, that's how we get into this quote. He continues, but no, I'm the boss. We're the boss. Okay? We'll do it at the end of the day, but you listen to everybody's opinion. Everybody can voice their, I want guys with opinions. I want guys who have knowledge. I want guys who make you think. I want guys to create different narratives that brought to the table that can help us. I think it's the best thing you can have. I think that's one of the reasons, some of the reasons you hired them to do different scenarios and different things like that. But as far as that, we all have great respect for each other, and it's been tremendous. And we've had great response and haven't had any issues. So in true Jimbo fashion, he said a whole lot in that word salad, and we got zero answers about who's actually going to call the plays, where Bobby Petrino is going to be, on the field or in the box. He punted just like, he wanted to punt. So this story will just continue into the fall. We're just going to have to watch it. If you care about this sort of thing, it's going to be must-see TV for Texas A&M this fall, because he and Bobby Petrino are, I've said it several times. It's either going to be really good or it's not. And we're just all going to have to wait and see how it goes. So, man, Jimbo, he let us have it okay, but boy, oh boy, that was a lot of words not to say a whole lot of anything. I'm coming to you tonight from the Grand Ballroom. This is where everything happens. So the podium is to my right over here. Now, you might be able to see behind me some of the signage from the player breakout spaces. The room's quiet, thank goodness. They finished up cleaning and stuff before we went live, so that's good. So I hope you guys can hear me okay. Again, I appreciate you being here, because this is something that I didn't want to miss my live stream, and because I said I was going to be here every Wednesday. Because of the time change and just the schedule that we have here, I couldn't do it at 7, but I am here for you at 9 o'clock, so I appreciate you being here with me. It sure is good to have somebody to talk to about stuff that we all love. And with that in mind, let's move it on to Tuesday. Tuesday, we had a day under our belt, but everybody knew that Tuesday was going to be the big day for us, right? Because that's when the Dogs were going to be here. But they did kick off the day with Clark Lee of Vanderbilt. And I have to say, when you see Clark in person, he is a very impressive individual. And whether or not he's ever going to be able to do at Vanderbilt the kind of things that he wants to do, if he were talking to you about your son coming to play for him, you would feel really good about that, because he pointed out several things there. And one of the things he said was how much, there's construction all around this building that I'm sitting in, and it's partly in part to what's happening over at Vanderbilt's stadium. Not directly, but it's all sort of a mess in this entire area. So Vanderbilt's having new facilities built. They're renovating the stadium that's on campus now. And one of the things Clark Lee kept talking about was, the pain of progress. And that's a really good point, because especially when you're coming from where Vanderbilt is, as far as wins and losses, that there's going to be some long days in there. But that Vanderbilt team did play better last year toward the end of the year, and they got a couple of big wins, including one at Kentucky. So to hear him talk about his team, was a pretty good feeling. And one of the quotes that stood out to me that he says, no matter who we play against this year or next year, and he was referencing OU and Texas coming into the conference. No matter who we play against this year or next year, the goal is that they play against a team that knows perfectly who they are, plays to an identity, and has weaponized that identity to puncture the shell of the opponent. I want everyone we play to leave the field having learned something about themselves, because that Vanderbilt group is a really tough and relentless and never stops, and also has the weapons to be dangerous. So he has a very clear idea of what he wants Vanderbilt to be, and he put a lot of emphasis on the fact that they are a very developmental program, pointing out that Vanderbilt is a top 15 school in the country, the fact that they are here in the city of Nashville, in the fact that they are going to grow these young men or these young people to be young men. So, as far as Vanderbilt is concerned, good on Clark Lee. I mean, he's a guy that you can't help but root for. And then, of course, the lead dogs showed up. Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs rolled in here on Tuesday. And before they even hit the podium, there was some news that broke. Well, he hit the podium in the big room. He was in one of the breakout rooms talking with earlier reporters. And he pointed out that Marvin Jones and Jalen Walker are full go after spring labrum surgeries. Dan Jackson is 100%. And Kendall Milton, who'll be dealing with a hamstring, he had one in the spring, he is 100% and good to go too. He did mention that Michael Williams will also be ready to go when when practice begins. So all of that is good news. Now, it can't all be good news, but that was a lot of good news if you're a Bulldog fan. He did point out that there are a couple of guys, Smile Munden being one of them, that might have a slow start as we head toward fall camp and into fall practice and possibly the first part of the season. We're unclear on whether or not they'll have to miss any games. I don't think that's expected at this point, but you can't rule it out. So it wasn't all great news, but there was a lot of good news regarding injuries for the Dogs on Tuesday. There was also a roster move. Smoke Bowie, who transferred in January, is no longer with the team. He joined the Dogs after being at Texas A&M last year. And it says here, the quote directly is, Smoke is no longer with our team. It's been that way for a while. He's kind of mutually agreed to part ways, and we wish him nothing but the best, is what Kirby Smart said. So whether you think that, we can all make our assumptions about that, but he's had a couple of issues. He had issues at Texas A&M, and now he's not with the team here in Athens. Well, in Athens. I'm clearly not in Athens. Hopefully whatever the issue was, he can sort that out and do something with the opportunity that he has in front of him. So good luck to him, but he's no longer with the University of Georgia. So Kirby, as always, is must-see TV because he's one of those guys that you guys are probably familiar with some of the stuff I post, the motivational bites, sound bites, and things like that we've all heard Kirby do, some of my edits of putting those together and things like that. And just philosophy, that he believes in and he shares with the team and with other coaches and stuff like that. So he's always must-see TV, and he did not fail to deliver this time either. The first quote that really grabbed my attention was that better never rests. We believe that. Those are strong words now when you think about it. Think deep on it. Better never rests. And that was after he had told us the story about the motivation for the team and how he was talking to them and what they were doing, what sort of ideas they were working around as we head into fall camp. Because he made it very clear that the story for this team is not written yet. They're going to figure that out over fall camp, right? They're going to learn more about who they are, and this team still has to come together. But they have a framework, right? They have talking points that they want to message to the team. And one of the teams that they did a deep dive on since the season ended, so back in the spring, was the All Blacks. And that's a team that it has the highest winning percentage in the history of sport, right? As far as anyone can tell. They have the highest winning percentage in the history of their sport. And one of the things they believe in is the idea that better never rests. And so in the deep dive that Kirby and the staff did in preparation of modeling their message, that was one that stuck, and that's one of the ones that's been relayed to the team. Better never rests. He says our kids understand it. Our kids have learned it. What drives us for this season is the intrinsic motivation. We're not going to be controlled by outside narratives and what people say and who's going to be the quarterback and that sort of stuff. He's saying that the team is focused on being the best that they can be in all that they do. And they're going to wrap football up in that bundle and see what that produces on the field. So that's just a little insight into one of the things that Kirby is talking to the team about. And I on my last live stream, I pointed out that if you follow the Dogs, you should really listen. You should listen to what it is they said at SEC Media Days, and you should also listen to what they're not saying. And as we talked to the different players, you heard these same notions over and over and over. Better never rests was repeated by Brock Bowers, was repeated by Cedric Van Pran. Sweep the sheds was repeated by Cedric Van Pran, which is another All Blacks notion, meaning no one is too big to do the most menial job, and that everyone has their job and needs to focus on that. So I pointed out in my live stream that if they are sounding like their head coach, then that means the message is getting through. And the message is, again, just to be clear, we're not going to be driven or controlled by outside narratives and what people say. And when you're the Georgia Bulldogs looking to win a third straight national championship, there's going to be noise from everywhere. There are going to be the people who are rooting against you, who are trying to just make fun of anything and everything to get under your skin and derail you. Fans give into that a lot, but he's just saying that that's not the sort of thing that they're going to listen to. They don't care if you pick them 12-0 or if you pick them 7-5, because it doesn't matter. And if past this prologue, we have to believe that Kirby has those guys focused in the right direction. Now, there's a long way to go. They still have to go through camp and the season, and things happen. But for now, it looks like they're headed in the right direction based on everything that I saw here. I mean, it was one dude after the next repeating the same mantras and ideas. And those are the guys that are going back to the locker room and making sure that they're holding their teammates accountable. When you've got Kamari Lassiter, who's stepping up in that DB room as a leader, when you've got Cedric Van Pran, who's been a leader and is now fully invested and wrapped in the leadership for the entire team, and you've got a guy like Brock Bowers, who is a leader on the field in his performance and a leader off the field by the way he works at practice and things like that. These guys are going to hold those other guys accountable, because when you see them working that hard or going about it, their business in a certain way, and you're not them, then you have to toe the line, catch up, or get left behind. That's what they're demanding right now. And if you're a Georgia Bulldog fan, that should make you feel pretty good. I see some people in the chat here, so let's take just a second and acknowledge who's here. Sacred Grove is here. I appreciate that. I see you. Thank you for commenting. I'm trying to keep up with them over here. Andy Cobb from Cobb Brothers, how are you? How about them dogs? I'm glad you're here with us. If you have a question, let me know. I'd love to answer it, or anything about SEC Media Days or anything else. Sacred says, they sound like they already know they're going to win. I think they sound like a group that knows what it takes to win. And so they have no issues buying in, because they know that if they trust the leadership and then they do the work, the talent will take care of the rest. And I personally like how that plays, right? I like how that sits. So moving on. Kirby went on to say that the intrinsic motivation comes from within and what we decide to do. This team, the 23 team, is still defining itself. We don't know where that goes. That happens over the course of the rest of the summer and fall camp. But I like where it's at. I love the buy-in. I love the fact that these guys are being around each other and that they love competing and that they love football. So that's important to me. And I was just having a conversation here tonight with some other media members. And when you do this kind of work, like we do, and in all things, but we can see it because of the way the workflow goes. If you don't love it, then you're going to get burnt out and you're not going to stick at it, because it is a constant sort of thing. There's always news, there's always something new to produce or write or whatever it is. And for the football players, obviously it's the same way. So they live it 365, 24/7. It is all that they think about all the time. And if you don't love it enough to do the work, you're going to get burned out and you're going to fail. Or at least you're not going to succeed at the level to which you're capable. So to hear them buy in, that does make me feel good as someone who cheers for the Georgia Bulldogs. Let's see. Now here's another really cool thing that I don't think I knew. I think I had a pretty good idea, because from 21 to 22, I had done the math about who was leaving, who had come the coaching staff changes, just stuff, just, all that kind of stuff. But Kirby pointed out something the other day that I thought was really cool. He said that every full-time coach on this year's staff, listen to me carefully, that's what Kirby did. Every full-time coach on this year's staff was on last year's staff. Tell me the last time that a national championship team can say that. And I mean, it wasn't exactly a call and response, but the room was quiet. I mean, no one was even murmuring to their neighbor about taking a guess. So that was a pretty impressive sort of thing to have him point that out. The same strength and conditioning coach, Scott Sinclair, the same player development coach, Jonas Jennings, and the same athletic trainer, Ron Corson, they've all been at our place for 8 consecutive years, the entire time that I've been here. We have 26 UGA grads on our staff. Retention for us is key to sustaining success. Again, retention is the key to sustaining success. We can't do that without a supportive administration, and we sure as hell can't do that without a great culture of people wanting to be a part of our program and pouring it into our kids. Now, what he was talking about there, he kind of did 2 birds with 1 stone. So people want to know, what's the secret sauce in Athens? What's the difference? He just told you what the difference is. It's because they don't have that churn that top programs usually have. They don't have that constant in and out of players the way some programs have in the days now of NIL and the transfer portal. They are doing a really good job of keeping as many players home as possible, keeping them in the program, and the same with coaches. And he went on to point out that the reason that happens is because of the culture. There's stone number 2. There have been a lot of questions this spring about culture in Athens. And based on what has happened this month in the culture discussion, they had the press conference last week to get out in front of the AJC article, which we'll get to in a minute. And then again, here from the podium at SEC Media Days, he took the opportunity to drive home the nail about the culture in Athens. If it is not a place that people want to be, and he told us that it absolutely is. The coaches love to come to the office. They bring their children. They want to spend time there. They want to work there. They want to do their best for Georgia. That's important to Kirby. And as an alum, that's important to me. And I am proud of the fact that that's how they go about their business. That is why people are staying at Georgia. And when you have everything else in alignment, the talented players, the support from the administration, all of those things, and then you have people that actually want to be there and do well for the organization, you get what you see in Athens right now. He told the world what the secrets are. The thing is, it takes a special group of people to do that. You're not going to see that everywhere else because it's hard, right? So I'm just saying kudos to them. I appreciate the way they're doing it, and he wanted the world to know from the biggest stage outside the season that he could possibly have how he felt about it. So good on you, Kirby. I for one, personally, I appreciate that very much. So continuing on, people were talking about how do you sustain that success, right? So then to follow that up, he's like, well, we're going to try to. And I don't care about the 3-peat or the 2-peat or the 1-peat. I care about complacency. If the focus is on that and the outcomes, I think the rest will take care of itself in terms of allowing our guys to focus on being the best that they can be. So he's not worried about, who's getting the ball or who's calling plays or any of that stuff that some of these other schools are worried about. He's simply worried about keeping his dudes on that razor's edge so they can perform their best. And I think he's spot on. Obviously, the proof is in the pudding. Now, when he was on the set with the guys from SEC Now, he said, our drive is to be a championship program. I always felt like Georgia was a sleeping giant, but to do that, you can't have complacency. So that's another drum that he was beating because he knows that the players are going to see this stuff and that guys like me are going to talk about it and that it's going to be on Instagram and Facebook and all these other places, and he is just driving the message home. That's what it's about, and he knows it. When asked about the perception of the Bulldogs having a cupcake schedule this year, this might be my favorite quote of the whole thing. He just looked straight into the camera and said, "Come play it." That's exactly what I say. I talk to people in the Big Ten or in the Pac-12 or the Big 12 a lot. And the thing you hear from them is, you guys only play 8 conference games. Why are you scared? You guys don't play non-conference. Why are you scared? You don't play big games on the road. Why are you scared? Why do you schedule these cupcakes for easy wins? None of them understand what the SEC is. They just don't. They can talk about knowing football and knowing their team, and that's fine. But if your team's not in this league and you don't watch them go through the schedule every year, you do not understand. And the coaches that we've heard talk this week certainly understand it. They know what it means. And when you hear these fans out here bumping their gums talking about stuff like that, you can just be quiet. Don't even bother arguing with them, because it doesn't matter. You're not going to change their minds. But I guarantee you that not one of them wants to trade schedules with you. Not one of them wants to trade non-conference or conference schedules with the Georgia Bulldogs or with the Alabama Crimson Tide or with the LSU Tigers. They don't want to do it. And we all know why. We know why. Because they know that instead of playing 2 or 3 games every year that matters, you have to play 6 that are really hard, 7 that are really hard. So just ask them that question next time and just see if they want their team to come and play this year's schedule. I think you know the answer. I doubt you'll be surprised at what they tell you. I thought that was a wonderful quote. So then, of course, it couldn't be all dogs all the time. It was a lot of dogs for us a lot of the time. But the next guy came up, and it happened to be Hugh Freeze. Now, talk about some intrigue in the West. Along with Bobby Petrino and Jimbo Fisher, you have Hugh Freeze taking over at Auburn. And he was, as contrite as he can be to a bunch of people that, he doesn't know. There aren't friends, family, or loved ones. And he said a lot without saying a whole lot, but just by answering things straightforward. Because a lot of people have a lot of questions about why he's there, whether he thought he would ever get another shot in the SEC. And he addressed those questions, pretty head on. So good on him for that. But one of his quotes was, "I do think that the 24 and 25 recruiting cycles will tell a large portion of the story of my tenure here. I believe that maybe 26, we might get 3 cycles, but we've got to start closing the gap on the elite programs in this conference. And when you add Texas and Oklahoma, that only increases the competition also. There's a lot of good players. They all can't go to the same school. Obviously, the transfer portal world adds another dynamic to it. How good are you at holding on to the ones that you do have in your room and then attracting the ones that can go in and fill some holes for you?" Because he knows that he has to turn that roster over, and he hopes that he has long enough to do it. He was very grateful for having an opportunity to be back in the SEC, but he understands what's in front of him at Auburn. Now, I, for one, think that Auburn is going to be a dangerous kind of team. Because make no mistake, whatever Auburn was last year, there was some dysfunction there off the field, and also the roster wasn't great. Freeze has done a really good job in the transfer portal and through recruiting. They are improving that roster. It is better. Is it anywhere near where it needs to be to compete in the SEC? We don't know. You just cannot know until they go play. But with a play caller like him and a history like he has, and the players that they were able to get, just don't sleep on Auburn is all I'm going to say. And Georgia has to go to the Plains this year to play them. So that is going to be, I don't want to say it's a big test as far as the roster is concerned, but it's going to be a very dangerous kind of game. So just watch that one. He continued to say, hopefully we can go be very good at that and creating a culture where our kids want to be at Auburn and want to stay at Auburn. Obviously, On to Victory is a big factor in that. That's their NIL group. And keeping our kids here that have produced and created value for themselves in the name, image, and likeness world. So all of that's going to play a role in it. But I see no reason why Auburn shouldn't be able to be in the upper half and competing every year. So he believes that he's in a position where they can make it happen, and he should. Auburn is a place that you should be able to recruit to. And if you get things right over there, they can be very dangerous. So it'll be interesting to see what Hugh Freeze can do with that situation. And that brings us to today. And there are a lot of people, I'm sorry, I got distracted. There are a lot of people who looked at today and they were like, I don't know, what's it going to be, or really going to have, I mean, outside of the local markets, right? Are there going to be any kind of national stories? But I found a few things that kind of piqued my interest. I mean, there was nothing great there, but there was some Georgia crossover stuff that I thought was pretty cool. But Nick started the day off. Nick Saban in Alabama started the day off for us today. And he had a few things to say in here, which all of them, Nick is, this was my first opportunity to be in the room with Nick, and I enjoyed my time with Nick Saban today. You've never heard me say anything derogatory about Nick Saban. I think he's a legend in the sport. I appreciate what he's done, and as a fan, I'm in awe of what they've built in Alabama. Now, do I want to see Georgia beat the fool out of them every chance they get? Absolutely, I do. But when people would ask me, who do you want Georgia to play, in a championship game or whatever, I'm always going to say Alabama, or at least that's all I've been saying, because they have been the best, and I wanted my team to play the best. So I was happy to see Nick roll in here today, and there was a lot of hustle and bustle and buzz about Nick today. So it was one of those things where I, for one, was happy to see Nick. So he had a few interesting things to say. And first, on the transfer portal, and this is going to sound a lot like Kirby Smart. So it's a chicken or an egg thing here. Or maybe this is just simply the reality that if you want to compete at the highest level in college football, you need to strive to do things this way, period. Nobody owns it. It's just you do it this way and you're going to have success. Saban went on to say this: we continue to drive to build our team through recruiting quality high school talent. We use the portal as you would use free agency in the NFL. That sounds just like Kirby Smart and what he's trying to do in Athens. So, Jack, I see you in the chat, friend. I'm glad you're here. I appreciate you being here. Thank you very much for joining in here. It's great to see you. I appreciate you being here. And I want to mention Sacred. He had a couple of things up here. He's talking about we gave him the blueprint. There are a lot of alumni on the coaching staff. Absolutely, I agree with you there. And you think Beck's going to have a good day against Auburn? Okay, I'm all for it. I'd love to see that. My wife would too. Man, if there's a school she doesn't like, it's Auburn. That's fact. For me, it's Florida. For her, it's Auburn. So continuing with Nick Saban, on his quarterback situation, he said, we're focusing on how do we develop the players we have. It's important that all these guys need to develop. There's no decision that needs to be made at this time, nor are we ready to make that decision. So in other words, he's saying, and he told a funny little story about how his grandma, somebody asked him, what's your favorite cake? And Nick was like, well, that's easy. It's carrot cake. Me too, Nick. And then he went on to tell a story about how his grandma used to tell him, you can't pull the cake out of the oven until it's fully baked, otherwise it won't be a good cake. And then he told us this about the quarterbacks. So he's not going to make any decision about this until we get down into the fall. They may play more than one early in the year to figure it out. But I feel confident that they will have a quarterback who can run that offense for them. I mean, this is Nick Saban we're talking about, everybody. But that's what he had to say on that subject. And on the SEC, and this is kind of the viral quote of the day, at least from my perspective, from Nick Saban. The thing that separates, this is the quote from Nick Saban today that went viral. The thing that separates it is not the top, but the depth. How many good teams there are. That's one of the biggest challenges. To be able to play with a level of consistency when you have 6, 7, or 8 really difficult games as opposed to 2 or 3. That's what Nick Saban had to say about what makes the SEC different from the other conferences in the country. And I have to say, he's not lying. There are no lies detected here. That's the thing that the other conferences don't want to hear, but secretly, deep down, they will admit to themselves. No, none of those schools want to come and do what you got to do in the SEC every week. And Nick, again, in the biggest stage that the offseason provides from the SEC, stood right up there and told the world, this is the situation. That's what makes the SEC different. So I, for one, was very happy to hear him say that. After that, we had our good friend Sam Pittman, who's now the head coach at Arkansas. He took the podium, and they asked him, being part of that old Southwest Conference group, they asked him what it would be like to play Texas and Oklahoma again once they come back into the league. And I liked his answer. He said, everybody's excited. I'm excited. You know, I'm from Oklahoma. I grew up a Sooner fan until I moved out to eastern Oklahoma and became a Hog fan. I think it will be a big deal for the SEC and specifically Texas because of the old Southwest Conference rivalry. Kudos, Sam. I feel exactly the same. I cannot wait to watch Arkansas play Oklahoma and Texas every year. Those games will be games that I enjoy, partly because if I had to pick a second team in the conference that I was going to root for, it would be the Arkansas Razorbacks. And to know that there's so much history tied up in the matchups he described, as well as the history that already existed here in the SEC, I'm happy that Arkansas is going to get to play those games again moving forward. And when they asked him about his quarterback, KJ Jefferson, he was talking about having a new offensive coordinator and how it's going to look different this year with Briles now being at Clemson. And Jefferson stepped up and said that he thinks Jefferson this is going to be the best season that he's had. Whether we run him quite as much as we have in the past, I don't know that. Maybe we throw the ball a little bit more with him than him having to carry it all the time. We have to keep him healthy. I think he's going to be very active, but he's probably going to throw the ball a little more than what he has in the past. So that's going to be very interesting to see, because when KJ Jefferson came into the league, he was viewed on the lower tier of quarterbacks, but he has played his way into being quite possibly, an all-SEC level candidate, at least heading into the season. And his big thing is health. When he's in the game, Arkansas is much, much more dangerous. And in his breakout session, Jefferson talked about throwing the ball more, that being the philosophy. We'll see. As we get into the season and the game's on the line and you got to have 2 or 3 yards, are you going to run it? Are you going to pass it? It'll be interesting to see the choices that Pittman and the Arkansas team make as we actually get into play in the game. So that's going to be something that's going to be very interesting to watch. And I see Sacred Grove here saying he might sneak in there and beat Bama or LSU. I think that's absolutely possible. I think they've got enough talent to be that dangerous. I agree with you 100%. Now, next was the hated Gators and Billy Napier. I don't have anything against Billy Napier, but, man, I don't like Florida. I think we all know that, and if not, I'm saying it now for the record if you're new here. But Billy Napier stepped to the podium, and the biggest thing that he said that I had any kind of care about really was, and there were a lot of things, that he said that matter, so I don't mean to say that, but just something that kind of got my attention, and that was his opinion on what should happen with the Georgia-Florida game. And, of course, like a good Florida person, he said it wrong and said Florida-Georgia, but whatever. He said, I think that the Florida-Georgia game is an incredible rivalry. I think that there's history there. There's tradition there. There's a ton of economic implications relative to these decisions. We are going to have to cross that bridge at some point due to the renovation in Jacksonville, but there's benefit to home and home from a recruiting perspective, and I think there's benefit from an economic standpoint for both athletic departments and institutions. And he left it there. So in that way, he really does sound a whole lot like Kirby Smart, and the fact that they might end up going home and home. But that was really the only thing he said that got my attention, mostly because it had a direct Georgia tie. And then we got some news, some breaking news in the middle of the day. So after Billy stepped off the podium, it came down that the AJC has issued an official apology to the University of Georgia for the article that they wrote, was it last week, about from Mr. Judd, drawing conclusions around the accusations he made around the University of Georgia and how they protect players. Now, I've had something to say about that before, so I don't want to rehash all that. But the news was that after the team, the University of Georgia and Kirby Smart held that press conference and posted contradictory facts to the story that was published in the AJC, at the end of the day, the AJC was forced to then issue an official apology to the university for the error in their reporting. So, and Judd was fired. He was terminated at, sometime over the last few days. They didn't say. But I had said in my last live stream that Georgia did the best thing that they could do. They got out in front of that story before media days, and then they addressed it head on in a way that I felt comfortable with as an alum and as a father and a son. And I am really happy, actually, with the way that this whole thing shook out in the end. Because even though the article or the piece that was published by the AJC as an apology had a bit of a sorry, not sorry feel to it, the bottom line is they still had to come out and apologize to the University of Georgia for getting the story wrong, in part, at least. And that's what you want if you're UGA. I'm sure UGA wants more than that, but that is quite the thing to have a paper come out and do that. So I thought they did, that was some big news. And I thought Georgia did a good job in the way that they handled it. And today we wrapped everything up with Mark Stoops from Kentucky. And basically Mark just said, he likes what he sees from his transfer quarterback, Devin Leary. He thinks that he's going to be able to do some things in the offense that's going to look a little bit different than what they did with Will Levis, but he likes the way Leary is coming along. He was talking about the physicality that he wants his team to play with and how he believes that last season the reason they fell off a little bit was because they were messing up that piece of what it is they want to be and who they are. So they've really been driving home the nail on being physical the way he wants to run his program and everything that they do. And he recognized Georgia as an elite program both in the conference and nationally, and the fact that not only do they have elite players, not only are they physical, not only do they have all the support in the world that they need, but he pointed to the fact that he thinks that the Georgia coaching staff doesn't get nearly enough credit for the way they coach the team, and that goes back to motivation as well as X's and O's and putting them in position to do things the right way. So Stoops had a lot of good things to say about Georgia today, even though he was here to talk about Kentucky, and he gave us a pretty good window into what he's trying to do with his program to get them back on the right track as we head into the fall. So that's where we are. Those are the first 3 days at SEC Media Days. Tomorrow is going to be a big day. South Carolina's going to be here. Tennessee's going to be here. They're not the only ones. Let me look at the schedule real quick. Whoever hasn't gone yet is going to go tomorrow. So I know South Carolina and Tennessee. Ole Miss is part of that group tomorrow. So it's going to be a very interesting day. And as a Georgia person, I'm very interested in tomorrow because, again, Georgia plays all of those teams this year. So hopefully I can get some good questions out there and maybe get some good answers and some content that's going to appeal to us, and make us have a better window into those games before they actually get here. So checking back on the chat here, I see Sacred. Thank you for hanging in here with me. I appreciate that very much. I hope some of you have told your friends to come sit in with us because I feel like we've had a pretty good time. I know that I am really proud that this stream is going the way it's going. Got the good camera here. I actually got a nice, portable mic so we can make it happen. The laptop, we are getting it done, and I appreciate y'all for being here with me. Sacred Grove, he says, Kentucky is always the scariest game. I think it comes right back to what Stoops said, which is the physicality. Every year at the exit interviews after the season, the Georgia players say, what was your most physical game? It was the University of Kentucky. Home or away, that's the answer every year. And when you play the game that way, it is a scary game. I mean, I mentioned earlier that I think Auburn should be a game that people look out for. People might be sleeping on the fact that Auburn could be dangerous enough to get something over on the Dogs early, or, the ball could bounce funny. You just don't know. And when you think about Auburn and when they are at their very best, it's when they're the most physical, when they are when they have those nasty linemen, offensive and defensive. And I was talking to one of the Kentucky offensive linemen today. His name escapes me. I think it was Eli Cox, maybe. I'll get that right when I talk about the content, more specifically. But Eli was talking about, he said that over and over and over. And I mentioned earlier, when you hear the coach say it and then the players reiterate it, and those players are in positions of leadership on the team, you know that they are passing that message along. All I heard from the running back, all I heard from the offensive lineman was that they want to be nasty and physical and hard-nosed in everything that they do. So it doesn't look like any of that's going to be changing anytime soon at the University of Kentucky. And in fact, they're going to be doubling down on it this fall. Now, you know, do they have the horses to back that up and ultimately win the game? You know, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But it's the way they play the game. And I think you're right, Sacred, to say that that's a scary game simply because of the way they play. So that's about it. That's what I've got. That brings you up to date on the week that we have had here in Nashville. Like I said, we've got another day full of information from quality football coaches and programs. So I'm very much looking forward to that. I should touch on maybe what I've learned this week. I've been doing stuff like this for years, decades actually, but I've never actually been to SEC Media Day. And make no mistake, SEC Media Days are not like anybody else's Media Day, okay? This is like Super Bowl Media Day over a week. And you've got thousands of people traveling into this location to talk to these players, covering these coaches and these teams. And it is an overwhelming kind of thing if you're not used to it. Now, like I said, thankfully I'm used to it enough to I'm not overwhelmed by any of it. But the thing I did learn is that I'm here as a one-man band. Everything that I'm bringing to you, I'm doing it by myself. And you can't be in two places at one time. So for me, there's a little bit of a lag in certain material to get my hands on it and then turn it into content for you guys to enjoy. Whereas if I were here with a group, and you know, there are beat writers who cover Georgia who do a wonderful job. Those groups are rolling 3-4 deep here this week. And I'm not trying to compete with them, but I'm just saying that to give you the perspective of what it is that I'm trying to do here. And it's one of those things where I'm the only guy here who's, you know, doing it, who's making it happen. Anything you see posted, I did it. If it's a video, a quote photo, if it's a tweet, if it's the live stream, whatever it is. And I do it because I love it. And I do it because I'm growing and learning and doing new things too. It's just part of my journey, right? So this is where I'm at in my season in life. But I think it's interesting to share that as much as I know what's happening, I know where to be, what to do, one person can't be in two places at once. So if I'm in the big grand ballroom listening to a head coach speak, I can't be in the electronic media room listening to the players speak from the podium. So I chose to spend my time in the grand ballroom listening to the coaches, which is where I have my most direct access to the coaches. And then when the players come into this room in breakout sessions, I can then go and talk to them. So just a little bit of insight into how this all works. And then, of course, the SEC does a tremendous job of making photos and videos and transcripts of the interviews and things like that available to us that we can then take and use to produce content for you guys. So if you didn't know how any of this worked, that's a little bit of a window into it. Like I said, all the gear that you see or don't see, you know, I brought that here on my own dime. So it's just one of those things where, and I hate to do it, but I want you guys to have a full understanding and clear vision of what it is that we're doing. When I say I appreciate you supporting the channel, just know that I mean that more than I can tell you. Because if it's not, if people didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't want to do it. And I mean, at least not as much, or it would be much harder to stay motivated to do it. So if you're here and you're enjoying what we're doing, I appreciate you for being here. And if you feel the urge to do something else to support the channel, I would ask you to please like the video, share the video with your friends and family, other members of Dog Nation. Let them know what's up. Tell them we're over here, because the internet is a huge place. Dog Nation is a huge group, and I guarantee you that the people that you know who love the dogs, I bet you a handful of them don't even know we exist. So send them over here to our little corner of Dog Nation and let them decide if they like what we're doing. And if you like what I'm doing and you think I've earned it, please, like I say, give us a thumbs up, share the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And those are all things that you can do that don't cost you a penny to help support us. And just know that I really, really appreciate it. If you did want to take that next step and support us in what we're doing, there are ways to do that too. You can find all that information in the description below this video, or at my website, adambeast.com. We have a Patreon that we have established. There are other things that you can do to support the channel, and just know that if anything goes in to the ADB machine from you, then just know that it's going to stay in the ADB machine, and we're just going to use that to do better at what it is we're trying to do for you. That's my promise to you, and I appreciate you listening to that. And that's all I'll say about that, because again, this is not an infomercial. I'm here to talk about the dogs, but I appreciate you listening. So yeah, we've spent an hour together. I hope it's been fun. And if there are no other questions in the chat, I am going to get back upstairs and enjoy my family just a little bit. It's 10 o'clock here, 11 o'clock Eastern, but I guarantee you they're still awake. I've been blessed enough to be able to have my wife and my daughters here with me this week. I didn't have to leave them behind in Georgia. They were able to come, and bless their hearts, they've had a fun week. They've spent a lot of time at the swimming pool and doing other fun things like that. So they've had a good week, and I've had a good week, and I'm still able to do some of this stuff for you guys, and I just chalk that up as a win-win-win. So again, I thank you for being here. I appreciate you being here, and I want you to know that we do this because we love the dogs, and I love you guys for being here, and I thank you. So until next week, I guess that's all I've got, and I can leave you with the same thing I leave you with every week, which is go Dogs!